Before I come to your personal journey as a banker, let me start with the theme of the conference. You've been a banker for four decades.
Yes.
You started as a PO, probationary officer in SBI, and you have worked across almost all verticals in the State Bank before you crossing over to the fintech side. So we have this whole debate on, on one side we have ambitious fintech founders who are probably telling their teams every day, in their strategy rooms that, look, we have banks had their chance for all these years. They probably, missed the opportunity in terms of effectively using technology to, to catch the bigger opportunity in terms of be it credit distribution or transaction, etc. And on the other hand, we have the regulator who has drawn a strict line, very clearly saying it's rubbish to say that fintechs can replace banks because any entity that is outside RBI regulation is not welcome to do banks business. You have seen both sides. So what is your take? Can fintechs replace banks at any point or at least go near in the next 10 years?
So your conference itself provides some clue and answer. This startup conclave is sponsored by IDFC First Bank. So this gives you a very clear answer that both are going to exist. They will compete, of course, and which is not a bad thing. And as we were listening to Mr. Khosla, fintechs are rewriting many processes and rules from the start and taking advantage of the lethargy of the legacy institutions and banks. There is a certain amount of lethargy because of their size, because of their legacy processes. So that is what is leading to the growth of fintech, and there are so many examples, be it Paytm, Bharatpe, Zerodha. So they are disruptors. They have disrupted. So even the legacy banks could have thought of it, but they didn't think of it. So there is a problem, and fintechs are trying to solve that problem through innovative processes. Yeah. So when it comes to innovation, as fintechs, they are doing exceedingly well. When it comes to the confidence, and I'm talking about the financial system in particular, yeah, the banks and the legacy institutions, they have a certain advantage. Because if I ask you as Bharatpe, put your 1 crore with me, will you put it? But if Vednathanji asks you, you will immediately put it. So still that difference is very there. But when it comes to payment, yeah, so either you will be using Paytm or Bharatpe or PhonePe. Probably you may not be today using a bank's UPI system, although every bank has, but they have, because they are so security oriented that somewhere in the process, they have forgotten about customer convenience and what is called the ease of doing transactions. So there is a gap which fintechs are fulfilling, but over a period of time, banks will become more like fintech and maybe fintechs will become more like banks. So there will be convergence, yeah, maybe, and, but it is not that you will see tomorrow that you replace a State Bank or HDFC Bank or ICICI Bank or any bank in the country. So both have their place, yeah, and both will coexist. They will compete. They will collaborate. As I said in the beginning, today is a fine example of a collaboration, yes, between a bank and a fintech, a startup.
Right, right. So you spoke about banks and fintechs coexisting, which is something that is being discussed a lot. As somebody, you are at a non-executive role, but still you are guiding the Bharatpe at the future vision, etc. What should be the big bet for fintechs in next 10 years and banks? Where should tap the opportunity? Should it be on the transaction side? Should it be on the credit distribution? Because the regulator is not too comfortable with the fintechs, handling getting the credit side.
When it comes to revenue, currently the regulation or laws are such that they leave very little scope for getting revenue out of payments. And even government has very clearly stated that you make money from other activity, not from payment. You can charge MDR on a certain amount. RuPay card is free, UPI is free. So in such an environment, what is happening that everybody is looking at cross-sell opportunities, and lending, digital lending is one big opportunity. Now today, even when Paytm declares the result or Bharatpe declares the result, so they talk not about as much about how much payment they have handled, but more about how much they have facilitated loans.
Right.
And when it comes to loans, Bharatpe doesn't have its own money. We don't have a liability. So I have no choice but to collaborate with banks and NBFCs. So we become a facilitator. We originate loan, we collect money, we act as an agent of a principal, whether it is an NBFC or a bank. But this is only about payment and lending. But there are many other activities. So if you look at stockbroking, and if you look at top 20 companies, 60-70% are dominated by the new age. There are ICICI Securities or this thing, but there is Zerodha. So very fine example of a disruptor in stockbroking. So Fintech is not just about payment and lending. There is an insurance sector, there is a broking sector, many sectors, and there are more than 2,000 Fintechs in the country as of now. Maybe not all will survive, but is still on the strength of identifying the gap and the consumer needs, define the process which is innovative, and if you have volumes, then keeping the cost down. So there is a great opportunity for the Fintechs to grow.
What is the next big thing that's going to happen at Bharatpe? What is your vision for Bharatpe for, say, next 5 years or 10 years?
No, we will be a very important player in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And today, Bharatpe, apart from doing merchant acquisitions, so we have a 49% investment in a bank, a small finance bank, more than 51% in an NBFC. We have applied for payment aggregator license. So that way, like any fintech for that matter, it cannot be a single product company. And we will be a significant player. And Bharatpe, my vision is that it will be a very ethical company, and it will set some good standards. And whatever debate we are seeing today about the issues around fintechs and startups, in terms of investors' disquiet, let me put it this way, and now emphasis shifting from just the top line to bottom line governance. Right. So in such an environment, if Bharatpe can lead that path, after having its share of all the troubles, then in 5 years, if we emerge as a, I would say, not the top, but a significant player in the financial ecosystem, right, and respected for good, ethical, well-governed company, I think that's what.
Since you mentioned about your association with Unity, the small finance bank, that's a critical point in the history of Indian cooperative banking industry. You rescued that as part of what is the long-term vision for Unity? What is the idea of Bharatpe as the partner in Unity?
No, again, it is collaboration. Of course, Bharatpe is more of a strategic and financialist.
Yeah.
It's not involved in day-to-day running of the bank.
Yeah.
That responsibility is left to Jaspal Bindra and his team. But as I said, that because there is a need for collaboration, so there is a very active dialogue and engagement about the synergy, and which is beneficial to both, which benefits Unity Small Finance Bank and Bharatpe both.
Are you happy with the progress so far? The bank has
yes, because the bank, it was PMC bank, and in the condition it was taken.
Yeah.
So again, it is being rebuilt. Let me put this way. new technology system has been put in. And growth-wise, it is doing fairly well.
Very well. Sir, it was in 1980, I guess, you joined State Bank of India. You were just 22. You came from Meerut, and you did your physics graduation. I'm really, keen to know. I always wanted to ask you. Never got an opportunity. Why? How did you decide to become a banker? Because at that point, I believe there were not too many options in private sector, but banking. How did you arrive at that decision? Was it family? Was it your own conviction that this is what you want to do?
1980 was very different than 2023. So that we have to understand. Yeah. Were you born in 1980? No.
No,
you must be. And I doubt there are many people who have seen that era. There are some people I can see who would have seen that era. Yeah. So in 1980, it was just a question of survival. So when you study, first priority is to get a job. Yeah. And you will try everything. And I was no exception. So starting after doing intermediate, I tried for SCRA, Special Class Railway Apprentice. It was a very well engineering career. And then I appeared in civil services examination also. And the next best thing was to join State Bank of India SPO if you don't succeed in your civil services efforts. And there are n number of probationary officers who you can say that their aspiration to join civil services was not fulfilled. So that is where, and when then it came, it was a moment of jubilation for the entire family. Yeah. And I mentioned in detail in my book, The Custodian of Trust, absolutely, about the thrill, and I can still feel it. And State Bank of India, of course, it has always been a very, I think, respected name in this society. So there were many banks where I qualified almost everywhere.
Yes. No, so in 1980, as you rightly said, things were different in the business of banking as well compared to what we see today. You have done 4 decades. So much has changed. In 37 years later, you became the chairman of the bank in 2017. Let me ask you, how has the life of a banker has changed from then and now? The context is this. Very recently, it has become so aggressive in terms of marketing and selling. And we saw, one private sector bank senior official blasting his junior officials in a leaked video. I'm sure you would have seen it. So, no, don't want to get into names, but the point of question is that how has the culture, the life of a banker, the pressure that one feels has changed between then and now?
No, pressures are always there in any organization. The nature may change. Yeah. So when I joined in 1980, it was all manual system. So balancing the books itself was a big task. There was no cross-sell, that you have to sell insurance, you have to sell mutual fund or do this. There was the only target would ever be about deposit mobilization. In UPF, Jama, Sangrahan, Pakwada. I don't know, not many people will understand what does it mean. But deposit mobilization fortnight. So once in a year you do that. That is all your marketing effort. And balancing the books. That was the top priority. So you talked about shouting. So the culture, Indian culture, let me put it this way. So people don't mind it, this type of culture. If you are in USA, UK, Canada, you had it. This type of bullying, it will not be accepted and the employee will go to the court and say that I am being bullied. But in India, the working environment is always different. I'm not talking about whether it is good or bad, but at times there is no option but the bosses to take work. They have to take work at the work. So people will sit for 8 p.m., 10 p.m. to balance the books every week. Interest application, such a tedious exercise. So the nature was different. And as we progressed on computerization, those things became our past, and then came all this pressure for cross-selling. And Sometimes employees feel not so good about it. Even sometimes customers also do not feel so good about it. But this is a culture. Let me tell you that public sector is still in catch-up mode. It has all been brought by private sector banks in the country. Otherwise, public sector banks we were never aware of. The word cross-sell we learned much later, after 25 years, that there is something called cross-sell.
So I remember one of the interviews I did with while you were just close to the retirement in State Bank of India. One of the things you said, as a leader, you want to be respected among your colleagues. I mean, the question was that you want to be feared, liked, or respected. You said that specifically from the team. When you crossed over to the fintech side, it's all public that you had to face personal attacks in such an aggressive manner from one of the co-founders who had incidentally praised you at the time of joining. He even called you the biggest hiring mistake of his life. How have you felt about this, and what do you think?
So one is that the respect which I earned over a period of time.
Yeah.
If you ask anybody in the industry who knows me, even you, I think you continue to respect me even today. Ask Mr. Vaidyanathan, he's sitting in the front row. So it hardly makes a difference. That is one. Second is that what I say about others, it is a reflection of what an individual I am. If I'm an honest person, I will believe that everybody on the face value is an honest person. If I have a criminal bent of mind, then everybody I will look with suspicion and feel that everybody is a criminal. So I have always believed that what people say, what you speak, it defines your personality. It does not define the personality of the people who you are talking about. So I'm very clear about that. And if I had cared for this, then I would have not been the chairman of State Bank of India, let me tell you. And there were situations where I have dismissed employees. I have dismissed employees in UK. Extremely difficult task, more difficult than India. I have shown the door to union leaders. I have faced graft situations. And I have dealt with corporates. Many of them errant corporates, you can say. But without fear, without criticism, I do what I believe is right. But this is my belief. Others may feel that's you're not right. So I have no control over that. But still, I have certain value system which we have imbibed from the family and over a period of time. So all my decisions are guided by that. There's nothing individual when you're running an organization. It's not about individual. If in a state bank I have dismissed somebody, it is not because because I didn't like face of that person.
Right.
It is because you're holding a position in an organization.
Yeah.
And that responsibility demands that you take certain actions, and that's how it happens.
Right.
But if it gets personalized, I have no issue.
Very well put. So, my final question is this, very important. So many budding bankers are out there. How can a banker who is starting out today can become the next Rajnish Kumar? What is the secret?
No, I believe that if you want to rise anywhere, in any field, there is no substitute for hard work. There is no substitute of having good values. Dishonesty can give you some quick results for a short term, but not for the long term. If a state bank, again I'm taking example because I've worked there for 40 years, if it has survived for more than 200 years, it has survived because it has a certain DNA. And it has survived all the onslaught of the competition after 95. That is when all the private sector came. But even today, State Bank's market share is intact. And it is at 23-24%.
Right.
So in such a competitive environment, why that organization is surviving? because it doesn't believe in shortcuts. It doesn't believe in short-term like valuations. Like it's a euphoria. So it has disappeared so quickly. So there was a time, 2, 3 years, and you felt that you are doing great because all your focus was on valuation, and now you are on the
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
where you are. So what it has taught us, that ultimately if you have to succeed in long term, the organization's DNA has to be value-based. And if it is not, it's just a short-term story, it is not a long-term story.
Well, that
So
was,
they are not startups, and at some point of time they will be grown-ups. But to reach that stage, maybe because as and I was listening, all of us were listening to Vinod Khosla and no better advice than what he gave. So it is all about striking a balance. If you are a startup, your energy, you see the energy on the floor of Bharatpe. It is exciting. And huge age difference. Average age in Bharatpe is 28 years. Average age in the State Bank of India after a lot of it has come down from 58 to 45. So young energy is there. Channelize that, innovate. But at the same time, you can't ignore the values and governance. Governance is not sham. You need it.
yeah.
And there are like every day you read stories about it. They all are great entrepreneurs. Let me tell you. You hear a lot about like tech company nowadays. Every day there is a story. But they're wonderful people. But somewhere in the desire to grow and ignore certain basic principles. And it's not that everything you have to do yourself. You need professional help. Don't hesitate to take it. They come at a cost. So you will have to decide at what stage do you start hiring and taking help from professionals. When you are growing 2, 3, 4 people, it is different. But you can't ignore the other side of the business when you are building a great company. So that's the advice which I can give all the young people and who are in fintech or startup space.
Well, that was indeed a very insightful chat. Again, thank you for giving us time. That's a wrap for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinesh.
Well, I know we just heard Mr. Khosla say that you don't really see innovations happening in fintech from veteran bankers, but here we have an exception sitting right here, from being the chairman of the country's largest bank to now running a successful startup. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, Mr. Kumar, and Dinesh for taking us through that conversation. A big round of applause for both of them. Thank you.